Welcome to our next session. We're going to be getting started in just a few moments. It'd be interesting to see where folks are coming from. Go ahead and put your location in the chat. We're going to be bringing Patrick Martin out in just a moment. Interested in where people are from. San Diego, nice. London, amazing. Sacramento, very cool, very cool. Boston, love it. So before we get started, I wanted to introduce Patrick and give you a little bit of information about him. Patrick's been in the technology industry for 25 plus years, working in various domains such as telecommunications, human capital management, relevance platforms. His journey in support services started back in 1999 as a support analyst. I was a support analyst too, actually, and he has not left the support space since. He has held multiple leadership roles through his career. After 4 years leading the tech support team, today Patrick is now GM Service Solutions at Coveo. During his spare time, he likes to play hockey, tennis, drums, most of all spend time with his family. Without further ado, I'd love to welcome Patrick Martin up onto the stage. Give him a big SX Live welcome. Patrick, thanks for joining us. I can't wait for your presentation.
Thanks for that intro, Ryan. Very excited to be here. So looking forward to this session, and hopefully, people will learn a little bit about our topic today.
Yeah.
Great. So hi, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about, a very popular topic, which is generative AI. And we're going to see how GenAI could be the catalyst to transforming your customer experience. So a little bit about me to add on what Ryan said. I've been in the industry for 25 years now. I am the general manager at Coveo, and it's been a fun ride so far. I out of my 25 years, I spent 3 years outside of support, and I decided to come back when I came to Coveo. I just missed it so much. So definitely, it's where I've been all my life. So definitely like this crowd, like the audience, and like the domain. So without further ado, what we're going to talk about today is I'll just give you a brief overview of Coveo, not spend too much time on that, but just for those who might not know Coveo, and then we'll get into the deep of our subject around GenAI and the customer experience, and then we should have some time for Q&A at the end. So let's talk a little bit about Coveo. So we are the leader in AI platforms around digital experience personalization. Our company is about 800 employees. We've seen pretty steady growth throughout the years. And one of the things that we're very, very proud of is our participation in the Pledge 1%, where we basically give 1% of our time, our products, our profits, and our equity to charity. And we're very, very proud of being part of that initiative. If we think about the platform, what it is we do, we mostly operate in different areas like commerce and service. We also have platform capabilities around website and workplace. But at the origin, or at the base, we are an intelligent search company and platform on which we can add prescriptive recommendations, personalization, merchandising for commerce. We have a whole analytics feature as well. And now, as most of you, we've added generative answering to our capabilities. We are a recognized partner with Salesforce and SAP, Adobe. We've just got our ISO 27001 certification, and Gartner, Forrester, and Infotech have identified us as a leader in our space. A little bit about our journey here. We've been at it for almost 20 years now, so we have about 18 years of experience in innovation and a decade in applied AI. So our journey started back in 2005, mostly focusing on enterprise search and unified indexing. Did that for a few years and started playing around with NLP and NLU. And as the new decade came up and cloud really started to pick up, we transitioned our platform from on-prem to full cloud, started playing around with behavioral analytics, machine learning, and all that journey to deep learning and LLMs that we started incorporating in our platform about 3 years ago in a few of our feature functionalities. And now our journey takes us to having enterprise ready generative AI for our customers. So let's get into the meat of our topic today. And it's all about the impact of GenAI and the customer experience. And why are we talking about this today? I think we can all agree that we have one thing to blame, and that is ChatGPT. Definitely, ever since its launch, it has literally taken the world by storm. And this is not me saying it; it's the data. If we look at this chart, it's really mind blowing to see how quickly ChatGPT made it to 100 million users. I mean, if you look at this list, yes.
Sorry, real quick for you, would you mind sharing your screen?
Oh, sorry. Oh, man. That's on me. Apologies for that. My bad. Completely forgot about that. There we go. Okay.
Looks awesome.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay. So going back to this chart here, it's really mind blowing to see how ChatGPT or how quickly it made it to 100 million users. If you look at this list of technology, you compare it to TikTok, which took 9 months, Instagram, Pinterest, Spotify, YouTube, Uber, all these things that we use in our daily lives, and ChatGPT took 2 months to get to that threshold. That is pretty impressive. So, AI has been around for many years, as we said earlier. So what's different this time? How will the coming of ChatGPT impact the customer experience? If you've been paying attention to what's happening out there, you can really feel that it's truly different this time around. But why does it feel different? Well, I think it's safe to say that ChatGPT has truly democratized AI to the world, looking at how quickly it got to that threshold of users. But now that it's out there, everyone has an opinion on where and how it can be used in a multitude of use cases, industries, etc. But what's going to be its true impact? Can it really transform the customer experience? Personally, I think so. With so many people using the tool, they've come to expect these types of experiences, and really, that I don't think that's going to be going away. That they're going to expect answers to their questions, and of course, that is my personal opinion. But I thought that I would ask an expert, so I decided to turn to ChatGPT and basically ask a few questions on the topic. So let's see what it had to say on this. So basically, the first question that I asked is, which industry do you think you're going to have the biggest impact on? And to no surprise, the top answer was customer support, followed by content creation. Okay, that's interesting. Understanding that customer support is right up our alley, and content creation is a huge part of what support organizations who have content strategies and knowledge management programs do day in, day out. It's quite significant. So, since we're mostly support folks in the audience, should we be concerned about this? Should we see this as an opportunity for us? Well, I really wanted to know more. So I asked another question. I wanted to know which jobs were at risk with ChatGPT out there. And the number one answer was customer service representatives. The answer that it gave emphasizes the fact that basic and repetitive questions can be handled by AI chatbots, really impacting the number of inquiries coming into support, which kind of led me to my third question, which you probably see me coming 100 miles away, but I just plainly asked it if it thought that it could replace support agents. And its answer, it kind of sounded like a Facebook relationship status. It's complicated, but more seriously, the answer was mostly around how ChatGPT could handle different aspects of customer service, like automation, self-service, 24/7 availability, but it didn't feel like it could replace the human touch that agents bring to the experience, although it's going to try really hard. Okay, so now that we know where ChatGPT stands on the question, I also did some research in the media to see what other thought leaders think of the impact that GenAI would have on support and the customer experience. So it so happens that people in the media are thinking along the same lines as ChatGPT here. It kind of makes me wonder if the people writing these articles actually use ChatGPT to write them. No, just kidding, of course. But the fact that the media are asking the same type of questions that I asked ChatGPT clearly shows that most people out there expect that there will be some type of transformation on how customers will be served and how this will impact support organizations. So as an industry, should we see this as an opportunity, or should we hit the panic button and put ourselves in crisis mode? We'll try to answer some of these questions throughout this session. And our first step is to take a few steps back and review a little bit what the current customer experience looks like. So if we look at it at a high level, the typical customer experience is going to start, within a software application, a product, or a web application. So as customers are using the product or the application or the service, they might encounter a situation where they have a question, they have an issue, meaning that they will require some type of assistance. We know that in today's world, customers prefer to self-serve, at least for the most part of them. There's a generational factor that comes into play, but the studies show that people like to self-serve. So they're going to start using self-service channels such as search, product documentation sites, FAQs, potentially go to customer communities, use chatbots, and a variety of different channels that are out there. If for some reason they're not able to solve their problem or answer their questions by themselves, then they will revert to assisted support. I understand that this is a pretty simple representation of the customer experience, but for the sake of time here, we'll stick to this one and not over complexify it. So we're going to break it down and see what this looks like today and see how GenAI could potentially improve the customer experience along the way. So let's start with where the experience actually begins. So in the product or web app. Today, most applications have some sort of search box or in-product help that will allow the user to search through an online help or some type of product documentation. The in-product experience kind of takes it up a notch and will not only allow users to search and navigate through the help documentation, it's going to be kind of a dynamic experience where the proposed content will automatically adjust based on where the user is in the application. And finally, there's also some technologies out there that's going to handle some guided adoption or training. Like WalkMe is a great example of this type of technology. If we project ourselves a little into the future and think about if or how GenAI can be leveraged at this stage of the journey, I see a few opportunities. The first one is around prescriptive assistance through the in-product experience. So we talked that the in-product experience kind of tailors based on where the user is at in the application. By bringing more prescriptive assistance, this means going beyond just tailoring those results on where the user is and focusing more on what the user is doing. So by leveraging the usage data, you can be much more prescriptive and about the help that you can give. And on top of that, with generative AI, you can make this, a conversational experience where someone is doing a specific task. You can help them, give them insights, give them best practices, and really have this conversation with them. So throughout this type of experience, you can also start to move in some troubleshooting assistance as well. So if someone is trying to build a custom component in your application, for example, let's say you're a software company, GenAI could help with this aspect and help with the troubleshooting piece because, it has access to this data. Which brings us to, next best action. By understanding, best practices that are well documented on your product or your services and how they're used and how they drive value, GenAI could recommend what to do next to really maximize value and drive this increased adoption through a dynamic and conversational experience, and all that by leveraging generative AI. If we move this over to self-service channels, in today's world, personalizing the experience is extremely important, right? So with the data that we all have on customers within our different systems, there's no reason why we can't tailor the experience based on what we know of them. There are great tools out there like Coveo, shameless plug, that will help you deliver these types of experiences. However, there's a wide variety of self-service channels that are used to help customers self-serve. And if your experience is not designed properly, this can create a siloed customer experience. And as not all channels are connected together or even leverage the same documentation. So throughout their self-service journeys, customers sometimes will have to jump through hoops to finally get the assistance they need. So let's say I'm a customer today. I might start my journey with search. And since I can't find my answer, I'll move to the chatbot, hoping it would be more dynamic and understand my need. Chances are, if my inquiry is complex or not really transactional, because chatbots are mostly workflow-based today, I might hit a dead end. So then I'll decide to submit a case. And as I go through my case submission process, the experience will potentially once again show me documents that I might have already reviewed earlier in my journey. So as you can see, it's a pretty siloed experience, and there's some friction in the flow of things. So how could Gen AI impact the self-service experience? Well, I think this will happen as we're going to see a convergence of channels. We're going to be centralizing the experience into a more conversational one where, search and chatbots will probably form one. So it wouldn't really serve the customer to maintain these two different channels that would offer two different experiences and even potentially not use the same content. Search using the content that is in your index, and chat using information that was used to train the LLM. Let's say you have this conversational experience through your chatbot. But by combining both, you get the best of both worlds, where search is going to identify the most relevant content that is personalized for the user and feed that information into the LLMs that will generate an answer based on that information. So by leveraging all your document sources, such as documentation, product documentation, FAQs, etc., the generated answers will be more accurate, and it's going to reduce the risk of hallucinations. Along the same lines, when you look at what GenAI will be able to help in your customer community, these customer communities have been put in place for customers to interact with each other. However, it's not uncommon for questions to go unanswered. So why not leverage GenAI to answer the questions automatically by leveraging past answers and all of the other sources of information? As for case submission, I probably would predict that if you have a great self-service experience that is based on GenAI, where customers have these conversations about their issues, you're probably going to be able to automatically generate the case using GenAI, so the customer would not even have to worry about that part of the journey, right? So that would really smoothen the transition from self-service to assisted support and ensure that all the valuable information is captured as well. Which really brings us to assisted support, which is the next part in our journey. Today, agents leverage tools like an insight panel to quickly identify relevant information while managing calls, chats, emails, and web cases. In some situations as well, depending on the tool that the agents use, the agent's going to be able to see actions taken by customers throughout their self-service journey. So they're going to be able to see the queries they've done, the documents they've viewed, etc. You have CRMs like Salesforce who also offer next best action capabilities that are mostly based on workflows and rules, but still, that's a pretty good insight for the agent to know what they should be doing next. I think when we think about GenAI, agent assistance, just because of what GenAI does in terms of content creation, it's probably been the area where there's been the most focus on where it can help. It's easy to see how this technology is going to help agents with automatically generate responses while interacting with customers. If you think back on the self-service journey, if all your interactions with the AI tool are captured, it's going to become easy to transfer all these to the agent so that they can really pick up the conversation where the AI left it off. Next best actions will move away from workflow based and being much more dynamic. You could also start thinking about real-time agent coaching, which is already something that is available today, but this time, it would be based on generative AI and really bring the coaching experience to another level. So, just a way to see how GenAI can really, augment this part of the agent coaching one step further. When we think about case summarization and documentation, they're right there at the top of what GenAI can help with, along with the creation of knowledge articles. I can even see how GenAI can help when needing to escalate something to engineering, where documenting has been done so far and including all the pertinent information for engineering and kind of tailoring the content for that audience as well. So when we go back to our original question, are we faced with a crisis or an opportunity? I think the answer is pretty clear, at least from my standpoint. I think we have a great opportunity to transform the customer experience at every step of the journey by leveraging, generative AI. But the biggest question here is okay, how do we do that? So I think the first thing that we need to understand is, as exciting as this is, or what it looks to be, there are shortcomings that enterprise companies need to consider as they go down this GenAI journey. And the first one is security, right? Enterprise must prioritize security. Their data needs to remain secure, confidential. So when they're working with a supplier, they need to make sure that the supplier can respect that level of security. The privacy of the generative content is another one, right? You want to make sure that you're not compromising sensitive information. You really have to be cautious about uploading any type of proprietary or sensitive data into these public tools to make sure that you're not exposing yourself. Definitely a term we've started to hear much more: hallucinations or lack of accuracy. By leveraging tools like ChatGPT, the answers do sound correct. but sometimes they can be completely wrong. So you want to make sure that whatever you're using reduces the risks of hallucinations, because your brand cannot allow to hallucinate. Outdated facts and answers, you want to make sure that your content is always up to date, and that it's not relying on outdated information, as definitely this can lead to inaccuracy and customer frustration. Non-compliancy and validity. Depending on the industry you're in, you need to be sure that verifiability and the compliance is crucial for you. So whatever is being generated in terms of answer, it needs to be linked to reliable sources, where the information is available for users to go and validate that the answer you generated is actually accurate and compliant. Content decentralization is the next one. And I think we kind of touched on this a little bit so far, but the generative capabilities will grow exponentially based on the number of sources that you have. If you're just using one source of content to generate these answers, it's not going to generate as much or as value add content than if you have a multitude of sources that you can leverage. This one as well we touched on is siloed search and chat channels. You don't want to have a disjointed experience leveraging different content, different experiences. We really believe that these will become one. And the last one is the cost. We're not going to put our heads in the sand. Anybody who started playing around with these models will figure out that it's pretty significant. It can even go up to 1,000x times more than a simple search query. So when you're thinking about bringing these experiences or building this yourself or having your own LLM model, the cost can be quite significant. So basically, to address these shortcomings, you'll really need to set a solid foundation with a content strategy and a knowledge management program, ideally enterprise-wide, so that you're leveraging all the information that you can. The answers generated can only be as good as the information that is used to generate them. Don't think that just implementing a large language model is going to solve for your gaps in your content quality. That's not going to happen. And basically, as we think about this customer journey, what you're going to need is to act as a liaison between that content strategy and your different channels. You're going to need that intelligence layer / platform. And that layer is basically going to leverage all the customer data to drive the level of personalization, identify the relevant content that you will need to generate these answers, as well as unifying the experience. So that layer is going to feed all of the information to the large language model that's going to generate the answers to the customers at every stage of the journey. And when we talk about unifying the journey, if the customer is doing something in your product, in your app, and then goes to your self-service channels, you should be able to say, oh, we've seen that you've been doing this. You want to pick it up from there, or do you need help with finalizing this task, and so on and so forth. So having that ability and that intelligence layer to connect all that together is definitely going to be key as you think about this transformational journey. So what would be the impacts on a support transformation? Well, first, let's talk about self-service. So definitely we see an improved self-service experience. So generative AI is really tied with all these conversational capabilities across all channels. So really having that ability to do the handoff from one channel to the other and gathering the relevant information if you need to end up in an assisted support channel. The level of personalization and relevance at every interaction, GenAI can boost this. You've got tools, as I mentioned, that can do this before that are currently out there, but the level of data that a large language model can ingest, it's definitely bringing personalization and relevance at another level. And what you're going to see as well, by offering more of a frictionless experience to your customers, is improvement on your CSAT and your customer reference score as well on the self-service side of things. If we think about it from an assisted support, we're not going to kid ourselves here. If GenAI is as powerful and impactful as it can be on the self-service side of things, there will be an impact on the tiered model, which means most of the repetitive and, for lack of a better word, simple questions that are handled by level 1 agents will mostly be handled by self-service. So what will happen here is that the cases coming into the support organization will be much more complex. And basically, I think that the tiered model will be challenged because you won't have that L1 anymore. So your L2s and L3s will probably become customer facing, and that transition from tiered to collaborative support models will be something that we'll have to consider, and really have this single point of contact on a case that you're going to be able to route that case to the most qualified agent available at that time. And that agent will own the case from the time to create to resolution, and have a support mechanism leveraging collaborative support or swarming to really expedite or improve the resolution process for these new and complex issues that come into the assisted channels. And last but not least, there's definitely going to be some operational effectiveness by taking out all the repetitive tasks like content creation or case summarization, case documentation. Your agents will be able to focus on the much more valued tasks that, like troubleshooting, and really spend less time on building documentation or writing documentations. When we hire agents, we don't hire them for their documentation skills. We mostly hire them for their customer service skills, their technical skills, their ability to investigate and troubleshoot. So spending more time on these value-added tasks and less time on the documentation aspect is definitely going to be an efficiency gain, and also an improved experience for your customers and your agents as well. So key takeaways, I have identified a few. The first one is there's really no denying it. GenAI will definitely transform the customer experience, and we all have to brace ourselves and be ready for it. Security, privacy, and accuracy of answers is definitely, critical when you're thinking about this customer experience and going down that journey. So do not minimize or overlook this. Work with trusted suppliers who have a solid track record in AI. Some companies have AI departments and they're really, really good at this. But basically, if you're going down this journey, I would suggest that you don't go down this journey alone. GenAI will expose content quality issues. That's for sure. So you need to make this a priority. You need to make sure that you have a good content strategy, a solid and robust knowledge management program, and you have the right tools to be able to identify where those gaps are and how to address them quickly, because GenAI will be leveraging your documentation to be able to generate these answers. And do not neglect the importance of that intelligence layer. This is exactly what will drive the accuracy, the personalization, the relevance that your customers are accustomed to today. Right? As much as GenAI is going to change the experience and expectations of what customers are expecting today, customers have gotten used to the Netflix, the Amazon, the Spotify experiences where they don't have to search. The content is tailored for them, and we know them, and we can do that. So don't neglect the importance of that. If you're just going down the generative AI route and you're thinking that it's going to be able to do all of that, you still need that intelligence layer that's going to be able to connect all of that together and really feed these generated answers. And the last one is, I don't think there's any going back. Customers want answers. That graph clearly showed it, that people are adopting ChatGPT. It's more and more present in our everyday lives, and everything we've seen at the consumer level in terms of behaviors and expectations has transitioned to the B2B world. So we can expect that it's going to change, and it's going to go fast. So that being said, we're now at the Q&A portion of the session. So Ryan, if you want to join me, and let's go through these questions.
Yeah, definitely. Patrick, thank you for that presentation. I love those insights about GenAI. I think obviously it's so relevant right now, and I'm hoping folks really took value from that, because I know I did. I'm seeing some questions here in the channel. First question I want to pose to you from Claire is, what about the risk when GenAI is wrong? For example, it does real-time coaching, but the advice is incorrect and sends an agent down the wrong path. What is the QA process for GenAI itself? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the key thing is on that is that it's all about the content or the information that you leverage, right? So I'll take an example. It might not be tied to agent coaching directly, but I think it's going to prove the point of the importance of the information that you feed or that you leverage in the large language model, and it's going to avoid these types of being wrongs or hallucinations there. But you have to leverage the large language models for their capabilities of generating language, not necessarily leverage them for the information they were trained on outside of your own ecosystem. I think that's where the importance of the intelligence layer comes in. Is what you want to do is identify the need or the intent, go to your contents, your source of content, and saying, okay, this is what's relevant here, feed that to the LLM, and have the LLM generate that answer. I'll take an example. If you go to ChatGPT today and you ask them who founded Coveo, 75% of the time they're going to get it wrong, and it's going to generate just some random names that have nothing to do with the company. But if you ask it to go through our Wikipedia page and you ask it the same question, it's going to get it right 100% of the time, because you've given it the right information. So it's not using the information it was trained on, it's using the information that you have given it. So if we're thinking about live agent coaching, if you're leveraging it on the information it was trained on, which let's say you're using, we'll just say like you're using an OpenAI LLM, so GPT 4.0, let's say, and you're letting it use information that it was trained on, which is the internet, it could lead you down a path, and it's going to be very hard to QA that. But if you're ruling all that out and you have a way to just extract your case comments, tying these to some of the coaching that you've done, so the case reviews, and saying, well, when ABC happens, it's a bad case review, and when XYZ happens, it's a good case review, and you only leverage that information to feed that to the LLM and say, okay, we're detecting ABC here, coach for the agent to do XYZ. You're kind of setting barriers, and you're just leveraging it for its capabilities of generating language, which is coaching the agent live. So it's really about this whole content strategy and what information you can leverage that you have today to generate the answer or the coaching that you might be looking to generate. Hopefully that answers the question.
I think so. That's something I'm really excited about with all this Gen I is it getting easier to point these things at the relevant data. I'm hoping in the next year or two that becomes easier and easier for most folks, because it sounds like we're all seeing how vital it is to get rid of hallucinations and stuff like that. So, Patrick, our next question is from Jess. She asks, do you foresee new security compliances being created with the acceleration of Gen AI?
That's a good question. I think that in industries where they're really high on compliance, I'll take, let's say, the financial or the healthcare industry. I think that they will not adopt these technologies as quickly as, let's say, tech companies will, just because of the level of compliance and legal compliance that needs to happen. So up to what point would a bank be comfortable, having something be generated to a customer around their coverage or their, their let's say their insurance on their mortgage, life insurance on their mortgage, and have something generated that could be brought in court, and it's not approved by lawyers. So I think that there's going to be some things through time that, yes, will change how security, privacy will impact these things. Definitely, if we think about the secure factor, this was like one of the top shortcomings, right? We've seen horror stories with ChatGPT where people put their proprietary information in a public, repository, and that becomes exposed. So definitely, I think it's when you're building these and when you're thinking about what you need to leverage, you need to make security, that number one priority. And it will change. It will change because now I'll just take Coveo, for example. As we're working on our offering and our product, we now have new sub-processors of information because we're leveraging other LLMs, and that's something that needs to be taken into consideration in terms of security with our customers. It kind of changes everything. So yes, I think there will be new security and policies that will come into play because of this, especially around what type of information you can feed these. Up to what point can you take all the emails you've had with customers throughout their journey with you and feed them to an LLM? You have contracts and policies in place, and you're gonna have to make sure that you're compliant with all the privacy laws like GDPR and things like that. So it's going to be an interesting journey to see how things are going to play out.
Oh, I definitely agree. I like this next question from Tom. It's kind of a comparison question. He says, Gen AI presumes that the underlying language model contains all the answers. What do companies need to think about to keep language models up to date and relevant with new knowledge? Will it require more than current knowledge management practices?
That's a good question. And I'd like to see the claims on the LLMs that they know everything, because if someone makes that claim, I don't think they're looking at the cost that it takes to train an LLM, because it's extremely costly. So if you want to keep that LLM trained on documentation as it becomes available, I'd like to see it happen, which is why in my presentation I wanted to put a lot of emphasis on the intelligence layer, because and I'll get into a little bit of technicality in what we do at Coveo, but those of you who are familiar with retrieval augmented generation concepts, is basically that's what we do. So we're leveraging our search capabilities to go within your index, identify the relevant snippets for the question within all your documents, take these snippets, feed them to the LLM, and say, this is what you need to generate an answer on. Forget everything you were trained on. This is what you need to use to generate an answer. So we're leveraging the LLM for its capabilities to generate text, not the information it was trained on. And to me, and a lot of people that we've presented this out there, think that it's the best way to first limit hallucinations, keep security and privacy into consideration, because all that is indexed in our index along with the documentation, but also to keep your documentation up to date, because having a tool like Coveo or any other one that has the ability to index documents as they are published, make them available, and then use them through the search and be able to feed them to the LLM, that's probably the most or the less costly solution to being able to keep content up to date on the LLMs, which, to your question, I think there's going to be even more emphasis on the knowledge management programs and the importance of the content quality. Yes, you're going to be able to leverage large language models to create these knowledge articles from the cases, but you're always going to have to keep this human in the loop to make sure that what it's creating is first accurate, relevant, and that it can be used and published.
Nice. I've got a question here from Tamra. She asks, address more of the potential risks and the drawbacks of relying too heavily on GenAI for customer support.
Well, the risks, all the risks are basically around the security and the privacy for the most part, and of course the hallucinations if your content strategy is not up to date. The other risk that we see from, let's say, a self-service standpoint is if you're using this as a barrier to not talk to your customers because you don't want them to call you, and that would be a bad strategy. Customers today have the luxury of selecting the channels that they want to interact with you, and you want to make sure that you keep it that way. So you want to leverage GenAI as a complement to your experience. You can definitely augment the current experience leveraging GenAI, and personally, I think that it's going to bring a lot of value add. But if you're using this to, as I mentioned, put a barrier and not have people be able to contact you or have to jump through multiple hoops to finally talk to an agent instead of leveraging it to have a smooth transition and capture as much information as possible through the process, I think that's really something to consider and a potential risk, and adding more friction in the customer experience rather than reducing friction and making it smooth across all of the across every step of the journey.
Nice. Great answer, Patrick. It looks like we've got one more question for Bobby here. And I think this question is a good wrap-up question. If you were to build a support system from scratch today across these buckets of self-service, assisted support, and operations that you kind of laid out in your conclusion, how would you approach that? What are your favorite tools? What's kind of some general advice some people can take with them?
Wow, I don't know if we have enough time to go through everything, but that's a very good question. To be quite honest, I would probably if I kind of project myself in the future, I think the whole self-service channels will go away, and that everything will be in the web app or the mobile app or the platform where customers are, one, authenticated, who they are, everything you need to know about them, which services they have, which products they have, what they're doing because it's web-based, so you can track usage, and all through that you can really tailor the self-service experience through that. And if they need assisted support, you can transfer that over to assisted. Everything can happen through your platform. So I think this is really where it's headed. But of course, that is like maybe 5, 10 years from now. So I think that's really where it's headed. So if you're thinking about building this experience in a support organization, or even I would extend it to a customer success organization, because all of the adoption plays and all of that, if they're documented and that to achieve X outcome, you need to do Y, and that's well documented, you can make this a digital customer success play for your customers to use. And all that should be within your own ecosystem, which means you control the documentation, you control the experience. They don't have to go to the Googles and the Bings to find information. So I think that's really where it's going. And if you're thinking about designing the future customer experience, I think that's where you need to start, is partner with your product team or your service team or your web team, depending on what you have, and say, okay, how can we make this one thing, and really have all the interactions through that.
Nice. Well, Patrick, thanks for joining us with SX Live. Great presentation. I think that's all I'm seeing in the Q&A section. So thanks a lot. I think we can end here.
Well, thanks again. And sorry for not showing the screen at the beginning. I was just too excited to start.
I thought it went great. All right. Take care.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.